and we were asking her about, I mean, she's such a massive and well-loved teacher of all of these big topics. And we were asking her, like, how did you get good at those things? And she basically said, well, I took the stuff that I wasn't good at and just sat down and studied it until I was an expert at it. So exactly the same idea. You take the things that you don't feel confident in, the things you may not, that you see as a weakness, and then you just sit there and study it and study it and study it until you're, more of an expert on it.
Yeah, I'm going to throw another quote at you. I think it's the Einstein one, but Einstein gets attributed with everything. So it's like Einstein said this. So I don't really know, but it's the one where it's like, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand the concept well enough yourself. I think that's a great thing about doing stuff like content and teaching and stuff like that. I find so many times I'm like, you can kind of fuzzily get a concept and you're like, I can't understand how this works now. And you go to write a blog post about it or do a video and you find yourself like kind of being a bit wishy-washy with your words. And you're like, yeah, I don't really understand what's happening here. And so it kind of forces you through that, I guess, just public pressure of like publishing a piece of content. You're like, oh, no, I need to go figure out this little bit and explain it because I don't really get it, kind of thing. So that's definitely a benefit of that too.
Oh, well said. So I'm going to go back to something you said way long ago from your backgrounds. Okay. You did some freelance work, right? And this sort of takes us on a tangent, but this is a big part of what we're talking about today. How did you find your freelance work? And how do you find out what you want to do for your side projects? And why would somebody want to do more work on top of their full-time job?
Well, I kind of wanted to do more side gig kind of stuff because I had such a bad experience with freelancing. It was okay. I had a bad experience and just like an okay experience. So one of the freelancing projects I first did, and I kind of just dived into it, didn't really have any idea what I was doing, how to manage the project, contracts, just like, I download a contract off the internet, sure. Which is it's a fine way to go about it, I think. But I charged this client, I'll try to be a bit vague because I don't want to be specific, but yeah, I think I charged them like $3,000 for this project, and it was this big thing, and they were just like a single person, and they wanted this app, and I must have done like, it was months of work for this person, and I didn't know how to manage that relationship. I didn't know, how clearly I undercharged. I overestimated, how quickly I could do this thing, and it led to some tension with the client, and I was feeling very unhappy because I was doing so much work for so little money, and on top of that, like, they, I guess, weren't particularly appreciative of it because I guess with the sort of lower paid clients, they expect the moon for very little money kind of thing. And I'm like, man, I was just very unhappy. This is a terrible experience. I don't want to be doing this for my career. So I was definitely motivated to, I'm like, all right, find a way to make the online thing work. But after that, I did get like a position. It was kind of like, really, I was just working for them. I was freelancing, like sort of like contracting kind of thing, but I was basically an employee at that point. So this one company, that was the company I worked for when I went around Australia. So that was a more sort of stable experience. I go in, do the work. There's a couple of other developers working for the company as well. So that was like an okay experience. But yeah, it wasn't particularly rewarding. I didn't particularly like the work we were doing. It was JavaScript, which was nice, but this was like, I guess it was like pre sort of the modern frameworks, I guess, but it was like just prototype inheritance, JavaScript, massive code base that you don't really know what's going on, that kind of thing. So I just didn't have these great experiences with freelancing. I didn't get a taste of it and was like, yeah, this is fantastic. I love the freelancing life. It was kind of the opposite. I'm like, I don't like this. I want to make something else work. And I think that's primarily what drove my, desire to spend nights creating content and things like that. And even afterwards, when I did manage to get the content stuff working, there was a lot of like just fear of like, I have to make this work. Like if this book needs to make money, I need to get these articles up because I don't want to go back to this like other lifestyle. But yeah, I feel much more stable these days, and I don't hate the idea of, if for whatever reason the content business didn't work out for me, like I'm totally fine with having to go work at like a bigger company, and I kind of want that as well, because yes, this life can be, I mean, each sort of different approach to your career has different stresses. And this, has its stresses. And it would be nice to have a team of people, I think. So, but yeah, those were my sort of motivations, I think, of to do the side gig stuff. Maybe not the healthiest ways to motivate yourself, but yeah.
Sometimes my best motivations in my life personally have been the times when I was just really struggling. And then it forced me to find a better life, a better way to live my life, I should say.
Yeah.
Not a better life, but I've made
Like
better
when you
decisions.
when the pressure was on, that was when you had to buckle down and really make it happen.
Yeah, like when I was having my first kid and I was like, I need better health insurance that actually pays for stuff. And so I was like,
Right.
that means I'm gonna go get a different job. So yeah, and I did, and it worked out,
Kids definitely change things a lot. I can't stay up till 2 or 3 a.m. anymore working on my books, because my kid's gonna wake up at 6 or 7. So yeah, it's like, no, you need to go to bed.
Time, no matter what.
Talk about that. Let's talk about, I mean, there's kind of two questions that come out of that for me. One is time management. How do you manage your time when you've got this full-time job and you also want to go do content creation type stuff? But and maybe we can just take this one at a time. But like the other question that comes to mind is like, what are some things, and this is a big question, you could really answer it a lot of different ways, is what are some things that you really need to make happen before you take that leap, before you start putting in all this time and energy? What are some, like what's the saying, like line your ducks up in a row? Like what are things that you would need to do in order to really set yourself up for success? But I mean, either way, time management, or how do you realistically go about it?
Yeah. So time management wise, like before having a child, it was like, I think it's like reasonably easy to find the time. I mean, it depends on your job. I wasn't really working like a full-time workload, so I didn't have that, like, you finish your job and you're like, man, I'm just completely just burnt out. I don't want to do any more dev stuff. And like, I totally get that. I had a bit of a lighter work schedule, and so it's pretty easy for me just to be like, well, I've got nothing else going on. I can, stay up a little bit, do some work there. Just very sort of ad hoc. I'd stay up till, I'd stay up late, 12, 1 a.m., that kind of stuff, go to bed. Yeah, not great time management, stuff like that. Since having a kid, I'm much more organized and I have a much stricter schedule. I'm also, I guess, more mature in my content business now. I've been doing this for a while, so I have sort of, processes now and things that like keep me on track. But I do kind of have my days quite structured. And I have certain days where I do my scripts and my video recording and things like that. But I don't think I'm particularly great at time management. At the moment, I just kind of work when I can. I have sort of set times during the week when I can work, when my kid's in daycare. I often work like a little bit after he's gone to bed as well. But yeah, probably don't listen to me too much for time management advice. I don't think I'm that good at it. I just, I make things work somehow.
From your experience, what happens when you're not managing your time well? Because I almost would prefer to hear somebody's actual experience. Have you ever messed up on time management, and it like, what was the consequences for that?
Well, I don't think I don't think I can really mess up, because like doing this, like I don't really have any strict sort of deadlines or things like that. So what tends to happen, I think, when I manage my time poorly, is that I'll sort of end up setting a deadline for myself. Say for I'm launching a book or whatever. That's where, like at the moment, I'd say my time management for my videos and stuff is pretty good. I'm pretty structured with that these days. But for my book stuff, that kind of fits in, or course stuff or whatever, that sort of fits in around everything else I'm doing. And what tends to happen is, as I sort of approach deadlines that I want to hit, I'll sort of just try to stay up later and work more and get more and more burnt out in, creating the content. And that's kind of the stage I'm at now. I'm sort of like 80% of the way through writing this course I've been working on. And I'm at the point now where I'm starting to get a little bit burnt out on it. It's just been so much like content that I've been writing, and I tend to start procrastinating. And all of a sudden it seems like a great idea to start building built-in bookshelves in our lounge room, and I'm like diving into learning about Vim and all these things I don't need to be doing right now because I'm kind of like avoiding, because I'm like burnt out on that writing. So yeah, if there's something that I need to improve, it's definitely creating a more sustainable way to write sort of these massive amounts of content required for something like a course or a book.
Okay, now I have to ask, and I know that Brooke had that second question. I really want to hear your answer of that too, but you mentioned getting burned out.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to like unburn out? How to recharge?
Yeah, so I don't think I could say I've been like properly burned out. I've read people's stories, and, being burned out, and it kind of seems like this more something resembling like depression. I don't think I get like properly burnt out on these things, but I do get to the point where it is hard to continue working. I really have to push myself to work on it. And yeah, I joked about building bookshelves and getting into Vim and things like that, but it is like procrastinating in a way. But I think probably that is kind of what I need. Like I need something different because I've just been like writing about Angular and Ionic and Angular and Ionic, and it's writing the same stuff, and it's at that same level. It's the same stuff. Like I'm teaching the sort of, it's a consistent course, so it's all the same kind of in the same area. I guess let your brain get out and explore, play outside in the grass, build bookshelves, and explore different dev topics. Get it like even like Rust and things like that. Just something different. I think, it's probably not the greatest way to get the job finished, but probably does help for me to recharge a bit that way. See, that's probably, how I deal with it. But again, I don't think I'm getting like properly like burnt out though. And yeah, what was Brooks? I've forgotten what the second question was.
Basically, like once you've decided that you want to take on a side gig, what are some things that someone needs to do, be it financially or just, with managing their full-time job and the side gig, or things they need to do with their family? So that's what I mean by like lining your ducks up in a row. What are some things that you would suggest that people do to just be organized and be ready to manage their job, plus now having this side gig?
Yeah. So important context for me that when I did make that switch, I didn't have a child at the time and was definitely in a position where, I can go travel Australia. Like there's not as much risk when you don't have like a family to sort of take care of. And if like you financially end up in a bad spot, it's, if you're young and you're not in, loads of debt or something like that, it's not going to be that bad. You're probably just going to go try to find another job and things will work out kind of thing. But I think the probably safe thing, and I did this anyway, because I'm a pretty sort of risk averse kind of person, kind of frugal kind of person. So I did the freelancing thing and basically just had that. The good thing about freelancing is you can kind of scale that, up or down as you want kind of thing. So I had that at a point where I was making enough money from the freelancing, but also had the time to work on my side stuff. And so then, if you're starting to earn money from the stuff on the side, you can scale the freelancing back a bit, as that right. So it doesn't even really have to be a risk, especially if you're doing the freelancing. You can just replace one thing with the other thing and it's fine. If you do need a bit of a buffer, I guess, I think I also had some money saved up as well. So I think, the common recommendation, you have that sort of 6 months worth of, living expenses. So you can get by fine for 6 months. Yeah, I would probably recommend that. Plus, not just, don't quit and dive into doing something, when you don't have any other income. Like, I guess it's fine if you want to do that. Some people do. I think it's definitely a great idea to, if you can do something, especially as a developer, you can get that sort of freelancing work without too much trouble a lot of the time. So you can just have that sort of one scales down, one scales up. Then when you're making enough money from your side thing for it to be your, your full-time thing, then you can just completely get rid of, the freelancing. And even to today, I do like consulting stuff still. And that's part of that, like what I mentioned about not having like a quote, like proper dev job, doing some like freelancing consulting, things like that on the side, purely just to keep in touch with the real problems and like have a sense of what real businesses are doing. I think is very worthwhile as well. I think if I didn't do that, I would have the perception that like I work with a lot of sort of medium, probably small to medium size sort of companies. And a lot of the time that the code and the code bases, they're not, they work kind of thing. They're not like these fantastically designed things using, NGRX and we've got all of our actions and selectors